point is Galileo's arguments and Copernicus's had not yet met that threshold of proof that it was really true. So the church held its ground. And so when Galileo championed the Copernican model, just like when Copernicus did, both the data and the consensus of other scientists or natural philosophers were still against the model. It wasn't until later when Johann Kepler, Christian, born in 1571, lived to 1639, he realized that the orbits were elliptical. That was the big key to the evidence becoming available that the heliocentric view was correct. And then Newton, another century later, his theory of gravity explained why these heavenly bodies moved the way they did, why they orbited rather than just lassoed off into space. And at that point, you had a bit more of a coherent system of astronomy and physics that actually agreed with the observations, and so they could make improved predictions. But that didn't happen in one single eureka moment. Newton himself says, "If I have seen any further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants." And that is, I mentioned that just to emphasize again the continuation factor between the Middle Ages and what was being done there in terms of natural philosophy, which just progressively moved into what we call modern science.
Yeah, I'd like to just interject something here, because this sounds remarkably similar to what is pretty much a standard phenomenon anytime a major scientific paradigm is changed. Whenever we see a major change in some understanding in science, there is usually an initial rejection of that, a high demand for a high degree of proof, and then a slow acceptance that follows after that. And that has to do, for example, relativity, for quantum mechanics. Whenever there's a major thing here, there's initial resistance because it's going against the ruling paradigm, so to speak. And so what I'm seeing here is actually just par for the course. The scientists of the days were calling for, well, let's see some more evidence for this.
Exactly.
And maybe a certain amount of initial reluctance, because this is the way we're seeing it now, but we're open to that. But we need some pretty impressive evidence, or at least significant evidence before that. And that is no different from the way science works even today.
You also have to realize we're in the context of the early Reformation. Catholic inquisitors, who, if you recall from our last session, were committed to making sure that heresy didn't take over, they were just going to let anybody interpret scripture any way they pleased, which is what their concern was about the Protestants. And so they investigated Galileo's claims really carefully to see whether they measured up both to scripture and to natural philosophy or science. Here's how Tom Holland sums up what happened. In 1616, eminent astronomers had been consulted, the temperature of expert opinion on the matter scrupulously taken. A panel of 11 theologians delivered their considered judgment that certain proofs for heliocentrism did not exist, and that it should therefore be condemned as foolish and absurd in philosophy. And by using the term philosophy, they mean what we mean by science. So this is absurd natural philosophy. This is absurd science. Continued speculation about the Earth revolving around the sun, though, was permissible. Just provide the proof. So Cardinal Bellarmino, who was the one that kind of headed up the investigation, he even assured Galileo that the church would reconsider its opinion. But he said, "I will not believe that there is such a demonstration until it is shown it to me." So again, a high standard being demanded. So this is not sort of religion against science. This is the scientists of the day demanding proof.